Welcome, everyone. So nice to see you here. It's always a good idea to come see Krishna, because Krishna comes to see us all the time. In fact, he never leaves us. In the Bhagavad Gita, he mentions how he's there with us all the time. Ishvara sarvabhutanam hrideshara janatishtati brahmayan samabhutani yantra rudrani maya. Even as I move about the universe in various bodies, Krishna comes with me. So he also comes in the form of his deity, and quite miraculously, Shri Radha Madan Mohan and Sriman Mahaprabhu Lakshmi Nrsingadev, our beloved deities here at ISKCON Silicon Valley, came here to the Bay Area, to this side of the Bay Area, and they're staying, so we feel very fortunate to be in a place that is mostly dedicated to economic development and advancement of technical science and so forth, but to have a refuge here where one can come see Krishna and sing his names and be with like-minded people. Also, we keep the books here. This is another important aspect of a spiritual center. These books preserve the tradition. They carry the actual culture of bhakti and a vibration. It's recorded. This should be no surprise to anyone in the modern day, because we've seen things like, well, what's it called when you, from one iPhone to the next, you transfer data? Airdrop. If you can figure airdrop out, anybody can easily understand how the same vibration that's in the spiritual world can be airdropped here through the written word. I mean, it's unlimitedly interesting. But not only that, it's also effective. And those who take a little time every day to read Bhagavad Gita will feel the effect for themselves. What effect does one feel? One of the effects is that one will notice a difference in the way one reacts to the world. There are circumstances in our lives during which we may make good decisions, or we may overreact to various circumstances. And the way that we respond will either help to make our life more harmonious and the lives of others more harmonious, or it could put us temporarily into turmoil. And many, of course, there may be gradations in between those two states. But the way we respond to the circumstances in our life have consequences. And we can notice that our responses are becoming more finely tuned and reasonable just by reading Bhagavad Gita. It has such power. This book has such power because it is directly the words of Krishna himself. And as we like to tell people when we're presenting the Bhagavad Gita, that Bhagavad Gita means the song of God. Can you imagine what would happen when you hear that song? And what's to prevent us from hearing it right now? So what I was thinking of starting with was a recitation together of the 5th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. No harm in that, right? No harm, all good. So let's try it. Let's try it. Krishna recommends it. The acharyas read these books. Ramanujacharya, Madhvacharya, Shankaracharya, they all study the Bhagavad Gita and comment on it. So if we do the same thing, what we're doing is following in the footsteps of the acharyas, of these great teachers. And if one does that, according to the Srimad Bhagavatam, even though one may not be an acharya, one is eligible for the same results. That's a nice prospect, isn't it? So we have the books, and now we also, on our Jumbotron, on both sides of the room, so you can be facing in any direction you like, we'll be able to see the 5th chapter of the Srimad Bhagavad Gita as it is. And what we'll do is we'll go through the English together and recite it. There it is. Chapter 5, Karma Yoga, Action in Krishna Consciousness. This sounds very practical, doesn't it? Okay. Let's make our objective to stay at the same pace all the way through. And we can do that best by, we're going to do the English. We can do that best by observing the punctuation marks. Hyperlinks, verse text, there it is. Very good. Are you all ready? Yes. I'm getting ready. Arjuna said, "O Krishna, first of all you asked me to renounce work, and then again you recommend work with devotion. Now will you kindly tell me definitely which of the two is more beneficial?" The personality of Godhead replied, "The renunciation of work and work in devotion are both good for liberation. But of the two, work in devotional service is better than renunciation of work. One who neither hates nor desires the fruits of his activities is known to be always renounced. Such a person, free from all dualities, easily overcomes material bondage and is completely liberated, O mighty armed Arjuna. Only the ignorant speak of devotional service, karma yoga, as being different from the analytical study of the material world, sankhya. Those who are actually learned say that he who applies himself well to one of these paths achieves the results of both. One who knows that the position reached by means of analytical study can also be attained by devotional service, and who therefore sees analytical study and devotional service to be on the same level, sees things as they are. Mere renouncing all activities, yet not engaging in the devotional service of the Lord, cannot make one happy. But a thoughtful person engaged in devotional service can achieve the supreme without delay. One who works in devotion, who is a pure soul, and it controls his mind and senses, is dear to everyone, and everyone is dear to him. Although working, such a man is never entangled. A person in the divine consciousness, although engaged in seeing, hearing, touching, smelling, eating, moving about, sleeping and breathing, always knows within himself that he actually does nothing at all. Because while speaking, evacuating, receiving, or opening or closing his eyes, he always knows that only the material senses are engaged with their objects and that he is aloof from them. One who performs his duty without attachment, surrendering the results unto the Supreme Lord, is unaffected by sinful action, as a lotus leaf is untouched by water. The yogis, abandoning attachment, act with body, mind, intelligence, and even with the senses, only for the purpose of purification. The steadily devoted soul attains unadulterated peace, because he offers the result of all activities to me, whereas a person who is not in union with the divine, who is greedy for the fruits of his labor, becomes entangled. When the embodied living being controls his nature and mentally renounces all actions, he resides happily in the city of 9 gates, the material body, neither working nor causing work to be done. The embodied spirit, master of the city of his body, does not create activities, nor does he induce people to act, nor does he create the fruits of action. All this is enacted by the modes of material nature. Nor does the Supreme Lord assume anyone's sinful or pious activities. Embodied beings, however, are bewildered because of the ignorance which covers their real knowledge. When, however, one is enlightened with the knowledge by which nescience is destroyed, then his knowledge reveals everything, as the sun lights up everything in the daytime. When one's intelligence, mind, faith, and refuge are all fixed in the Supreme, then one becomes fully cleansed of misgivings through complete knowledge, and thus proceeds straight on path of liberation. The humble sages, by virtue of true knowledge, see with equal vision a learned and gentle Brahmana, a cow, an elephant, a dog, and a dog-eater outcast. Those whose minds are established in sameness and equanimity have already conquered the conditions of birth and death. They are flawless like Brahman, and thus they are already situated in Brahman. A person who neither rejoices upon achieving something pleasant nor laments upon obtaining something unpleasant, who is self-intelligent, who is unbewildered, and who knows the signs of God, is already situated in transcendence. Such a liberated person is not attracted to material sense pleasure, but is always in trance, enjoying the pleasure within. In this way, the self-realized person enjoys unlimited happiness, for he concentrates on the Supreme. An intelligent person does not of misery, which are due to contact with the material senses. O son of Kunti, such pleasures have a beginning and an end, and so the wise man does not delight in them. Before giving up this present body, if one is able to tolerate the urges of the material senses and check the force of desire and anger, he is well situated and is happy in this world. One whose happiness is within, who is active and rejoices within, and whose aim is inward, is actually the perfect mystic. He is liberated in the Supreme, and ultimately he attains the Supreme. Those who are beyond the dualities that arise from doubts, whose minds are engaged within, who are always busy working for the welfare of all living beings, and who are free from all sins, achieve liberation in the Supreme. Those who are free from anger and all material desires, who are self-realized, self-disciplined, and constantly endeavoring for perfection, are assured of liberation in the Supreme in the very near future. Shutting out all external sense objects, keeping the eyes and vision concentrated between the two eyebrows, suspending the inward and outward breaths within the nostrils, and thus controlling the mind, senses, and intelligence. The transcendentalist, aiming at liberation, becomes free from desire, fear, and anger. One who is always in this state is certainly liberated. A person in full consciousness of me, knowing me to be the ultimate beneficiary of all sacrifices and austerities, the Supreme Lord of all planets and demigods, and the benefactor and well-wisher of all living entities, attains peace from the pangs of material existence. Congratulations. This is one of the most important days of your life, to have recited a chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. And if one takes the time each day to do this through the weeks, the months, and the years, then one will have an increasingly enriching life, which will culminate in a direct relationship with Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, or rather one's realization that one has a direct relationship with Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and it will be manifested most prominently and very quickly by the association of the Bhagavad Gita. Also, it's a highly recommended process to share the Bhagavad Gita with others. If one can read it for oneself and then take up the practice of teaching it to others in one's home or in other people's homes, then Krishna gives one special consideration. As he mentions in the Gita itself, there's no one in this world more dear to him than those who teach the Bhagavad Gita to others. It doesn't take much. One can get a Bhagavad Gita and read it regularly, and then by Krishna's direction from within the heart and from the instruction of those who have studied it and realized it, one can also come to an understanding of the Bhagavad Gita for oneself and then pass those realizations on to other people. And this makes it for a completely balanced life, fully absorbed in Krishna consciousness, these two activities. Hearing Bhagavad Gita and teaching Bhagavad Gita to others in many different forms. Now, I like to look at the verse 7 from this chapter in both the Sanskrit and the English, because it's a pleasing verse to look at. And 5.7. I'll say the Sanskrit, and please repeat. Yoga yukto vishuddhatma vijitatma jitendriyaha sarvabhutatma bhutatma kurvan api nalipyate. Now some of you chant and we'll repeat. Yoga yukto vishuddhatma vijitatma jitendriyaha
sarvabhutatma bhutatma kurvan api nalipyate.
Yoga yukto vishuddhatma vijitatma jitendriyaha
sarvabhutatma
bhutatma
kurvanapi nalipyate.
Yoga yukto vishuddhatma vijitatma jitendriyaha
Sarvabhutatma bhutatma kurvan api
nalipyate. Yoga yukto vishuddhatma vijitatma jitendriyaha sarvabhutatma bhutatma kurvanapi nalipyate. Yoga yukta vishuddhatma vijitatma jitendriyaha
sarvabhutatma bhutatma kurvan api nalipyate.
One more. Yoga yukta vishuddhatma
vijitatma
jitendriyaha sarvabhutatma bhutatma
kurvanapi
nalipyate.
Yoga yukta vishuddhatma vijitatma jitendriyaha sarvabhutatma bhutatma kurvanapi nalipyate. Yoga yukta, engaged in devotional service. Vishuddha atma, a purified soul. Vijita atma, self-controlled. Jita indriyaha, having conquered the senses. Chitta Indriyaha, having conquered the senses. Jitta Indriyaha, having conquered the senses. Sarvabhuta, to all living beings. Atma Bhuta Atma, compassionate. Kurvan api, although engaged in work. We planned it that way. Although engaged in work. Na, never. Lipyate, is entangled. Translation, one who works in devotion, who is a pure soul, and who controls his mind and senses is dear to everyone, and everyone is dear to him. Though always working, such a man is never entangled. Purport. One who is on the path of liberation by Krishna consciousness is very dear to every living being, and every living being is dear to him. This is due to his Krishna consciousness. Such a person cannot think of any living being as separate from Krishna, just as the leaves and branches of a tree are not separate from the tree. He knows very well that by pouring water on the root of the tree, the water will be distributed to all the leaves and branches. Or by supplying food to the stomach, the energy is automatically distributed throughout the body. Because one who works in Krishna consciousness is servant to all, he is very dear to everyone. And because everyone is satisfied by his work, he is pure in consciousness. Because he is pure in consciousness, his mind is completely controlled. And because his mind is controlled, his senses are also controlled. Because his mind is always fixed on Krishna, there's no chance of his being deviated from Krishna. Nor is there a chance that he will engage his senses in matters other than the service of the Lord. He does not like to hear anything except topics relating to Krishna. He does not like to eat anything which is not offered to Krishna, and he does not wish to go anywhere if Krishna is not involved. Therefore, his senses are controlled. A man of controlled senses cannot be offensive to anyone. One may ask, why then was Arjuna offensive in battle to others? Wasn't he in Krishna consciousness? Arjuna was only superficially offensive because, as has already been explained, in the second chapter, all the assembled persons on the battlefield would continue to live individually as a soul cannot be slain. So, spiritually, no one was killed on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. Only their dresses were changed by the order of Krishna, who is personally present. Therefore, Arjuna, while fighting on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, was not really fighting at all. He was simply carrying out the orders of Krishna in full Krishna consciousness. Such person is never entangled in the reactions of work. Let's say a few prayers out of gratitude for our acharyas and spiritual masters who have made this knowledge readily available right here in Silicon Valley. Om Ajnana-timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Dena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manopishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadahmayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Sri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatham Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvetam Sadvatutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakan Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dina Bandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanusute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vansha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Gaur Premanande, Hari Hari Bo. Okay, Yoga Yukta. So that means engage in devotional service. So this is Yukta means to be connected to something. And Krishna describes this yoga in various ways, but the objective of the Bhagavad Gita as it is to bring us to the conclusion of Bhagavad Gita, which is devotional service, which is the highest rung on the yoga ladder to come to loving service with Krishna. Yoga Yukta, Yukto. So it's actually... Bhakti comes from the root word bhaj, which means a kind of worship or exchange with the Supreme. And there are various bhakti practices through which one can be engaged in this loving service to Krishna. It's, in the beginning, a kind of practice. Of course, how does one practice love? Love is something that happens spontaneously, but it can be stimulated by staying in contact with the objects that remind us of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And we, through the culture of Krishna consciousness, association with devotees, by worshiping Krishna's form, or as Krishna Kshetra Swami's book, Attending the Form of Krishna, was one of the books about a worship of Krishna. I always liked that form, attending the form of Krishna. And then living in a holy place where the only business is worshiping Krishna, like Vrindavan. Vrindavan is Krishna's hometown, and if one goes there, one will find that the only business going on there is worshiping Krishna. People are making garlands, thousands of garlands, tens of thousands of garlands every day, and where do they go? They all go to Krishna. And people are moving through the streets, and there's traffic jams, but where's everybody going? They're trying to make it to Darshan, to see Krishna there. And people make greetings to each other, but they say things like Radhe Radhe and Hare Krishna. Everyone say Radhe Radhe Hare Krishna. Radhe Radhe Hare Krishna. Yeah, it all goes on in Vrindavan, so a holy place is special. And the vibration there is special. Actually, these are kind of embassies from the spiritual world. When I went in Calcutta once, after I've been in India for 3 months, and I was, starting to get acclimatized to the culture there. I was even drinking the tap water in Calcutta because I thought it was really tough. And for some reason, I had to go to the American embassy, and I looked inside, and everything was American. There were Marines inside, and then they even had, beyond the glass, when you walk in, they even had bottled water from America. They didn't buy anything from India. And I thought, that's America, right past that wall. And in the Vrindavan also, it's not different from the spiritual world. So you can live in the Dham, you can spend time there and see what it feels like to be in that vibration. And then you can also read Srimad Bhagavatam. Now, Srimad Bhagavatam is described as a book which is an incarnation of Krishna, and is actually meant to purify people of the misconception that they'll be happy in the material world and reestablish their relationship with Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. As a famous verse, which is worth repeating, that comes about in the first canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, Anarto pasanam sakshad bhakti yogam adhoksije lokasya ajanato vidvams chakre satvata samhitam, which means generally people don't know that the goal of life is to awaken love for Krishna, And Srila Vyasadeva brought the Srimad Bhagavatam, by the order of his spiritual master, into the world purview, just so people could overcome their difficulties in material life and attain perfection in Krishna consciousness. Anarto pasanam sakshat bhakti yogam and hoksaja. Yeah, it's devotional service to Hoksaja. That's Krishna. So there are these various ways in devotional service that one stays engaged. One can also work for Krishna. That means that do your work, because you're going to have to do it anyway to maintain some kind of standing here in Silicon Valley. But at the same time, you dedicate that work to the Supreme. So one way to do that is to give some of the money that you earn to spread Krishna consciousness, and that's immediately effective. As soon as you give the money, there may be some hesitation in the beginning because you're thinking, well, I could have used that to, build a new wing on my house or something like that. And news from Vrindavan, we're getting these little... And then as soon as you give it and it's gone, then you realize, oh, it went to Krishna. And there's a kind of satisfaction that one feels. We heard in the purport of the verse that when you water the root of a tree, then all the leaves and branches become naturally revived and nourished. So in the same way, when you give to Krishna, there's a way in which, as a part and parcel of Krishna, you will feel nourished by nourishing Krishna. That experience in and of itself is a revelation, because it's counterintuitive to the way in which I'm thinking and I'm taught in the material world, that you have to get everything for yourself and hold on to it as much as possible so you don't lose anything, which is hardly possible anyway, because it all slips away one way or another. So it's a feeling of relief in many different ways. I gave it away, but I gained. That's something to remember. And then one's mind goes to Krishna, because whatever we give to, we develop a sense of ownership for. As soon as people join some team or school or cause, or they start giving, they say, yeah, and that's what I'm with. You guys should be with that too. And they start to feel an alliance there. It's very easy. Living entities like to be allied with somebody because we're naturally allied to Krishna. But if we actually ally ourselves with Krishna by giving some of our wealth, then very quickly we start to feel this connection to him. And this is yoga yukta, engaged in devotional service. So working for Krishna, and then of course there are the direct processes of bhakti, like chanting Hare Krishna, which everyone should try. Everyone should do every day if they would like to have this experience of Krishna intervening or entering into their lives and bringing them to the state of bliss. So because Krishna's name and Krishna himself are absolutely non-different. They're the same. And one can test this for oneself. It's best done with a little bit of concentration in the form of japa, where one could take some time and chant to oneself and actually think about the names that one's chanting and think that they are the names of Krishna and so forth. And just by doing that regularly, that one will have this experience that one's senses are becoming purified and controlled. So that's, he mentions next, Vishuddha Atma, a purified soul. So how does one get purified, and purified of what? There are various misconceptions that I might have due to my attachment to matter. Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita that Bhoga Aishvarya Prasaktanam Taya Prahita Chetasam. That's Bhoga and Aishvarya. I have a misconception that I'll be able to enjoy something here in the material world. That's absolutely incorrect. You absolutely cannot enjoy anything here in the material world and feel satisfied by it in the end. Because there's a phenomenon which exists everywhere in the material world called Bhoga Tyag. And what happens when I try to enjoy in the material world, there's a saturation point at which I don't like it anymore. The same thing I like today, I don't like tomorrow. It actually becomes repulsive to me, and then I want to give it up. So I go the opposite way. And after I've done that for a while, then my senses jump back to life and say, no, maybe I'll try it again. And then they go back to that. trying to enjoy. So they swing back and forth between this bhoga and tyaga. Tyaga means to give it up, and then bhoga means to try to enjoy it again. So this absolutely does not work. And Aishvarya means that I will find a way to have enough money in the material world that I'll be able to retire and just hang around and not do anything. That doesn't work either. Because as soon as you make enough money, then something will happen to the physical body where you have to spend it all, and then you'll end up having to work hard. So the whole scheme that my mind has come up with for happiness in the material world, and may be represented through the modern education system and various other ways, it actually doesn't work. So one can categorically give that up and just engage oneself in devotional service. And as one does and replaces the kind of enjoyment that one's seeking with a happiness that comes from within, which can really be attained through the processes of bhakti, especially deity worship. If one becomes engaged in worshiping the form of Krishna, visiting Krishna in the temple, offering a flower, as Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, patram pushpam palam toyam yomi bhaktya priyachati taram bhakti paritam ashnami paritatmana. If you just offer me with love and devotion a leaf, a flower, fruit, or water, I'll accept it. And you see the smiling face of Krishna in the temple, and you offer him something, and you can smell the incense, then there's a wave of ecstasy that will go through your body. Maybe you're on your way to work, and you stop in to see Krishna, and you offer him a flower, a coconut, or maybe an apple or something like that. And then you feel satisfied. I gave something to Krishna, and Krishna looked at me, and then you feel happy. This is, your senses become purified by this. And then there's a kind of a natural connection one feels with Krishna. And then if you can, get closer to the deity, you can participate in a festival. There's festivals. This is part of the deity worship where we put on Janmashtami festivals. We put on festivals for Guru Purnima and the Shringa Chaturdashi. And if you can get involved in that and sweep the floor, for instance, then you'll feel this happiness in your heart that I'm sweeping Krishna's floor. Or if you can actually get in the kitchen and wash pots, then you can scrub the pot and you feel the steam coming up from the sink and everything. Your clothes are getting a little bit wet and stuff like that. Then you don't care anymore, and you start to feel like, wow, I'm in here washing pots for Krishna. I'm not getting paid for this, and then all of a sudden you feel like, wow, I'm actually connected to Krishna through washing the pots. And these are all direct experiences. As Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, you should be able to experience this directly. Pratyakshaavagamam dharmyam. And he said, this is the perfection of religion, of dharma, when you can experience it for yourself. And by engaging the senses, what kind of senses do we have? Name a couple of them. Have you noticed them lately, or are you just using them randomly, or what? What kind of senses do you have? Everyone said eyes. Yeah, you got a lot of eyes are out there. There's a lot of eyes, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20. A lot of eyes, and it's a very sophisticated mechanism. Fancier than the iPhone 7. It's amazing. And you have it, it's a sense. It's an indriya. And from that, what other sense you have? Ears, nose, tongue. Think about it. I mean, it's amazing. So these senses, they're original senses, they're spiritual senses. They get covered over by this material senses so that I can engage with the external material world like virtual reality, kind of. I'm seeing things, I'm moving around, like, oh, now I've got money in the bank, and now my car's crashing, and now, you go through a lifetime, watching things through all these senses, a little virtual reality helmet you put on here. But the real senses are meant for direct engagement in the service of the Lord. And by engaging the external senses in the service of Krishna, through some of the various processes I just talked about, chanting, worshiping the deity, giving your money to Krishna, then those senses become purified. And it's a principle mentioned by Srila Prabhupada often, where you take an iron rod and you put it in fire. And then it becomes hotter, 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 and then it becomes red hot. And then you can't tell the difference between the rod and the fire. It's red hot. So Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, Brahmarpanam Brahmahavir, Brahmagnau Brahmanohutam, Brahmaiva Tena Gantavyam, Brahma Karma Samadhina. Who knows that verse? A lot of people know it in India because they say it before they take prasadam, I think. It's prasadam prayer, yeah. And this means that whatever you engage in the service of Krishna becomes spiritualized. So what was normally blunt material senses, they start to become fire-like, spiritualized, because you engage them in the service. So this means Vashuddha Atma. Then the soul, the person, his person becomes purified. And then Vijita Atma. Now, self-controlled and Jitta Indriya, having conquered the senses. These are two terms that should be music to our ears. Thinking about a time at which I'm completely self-controlled and have conquered the senses. This is cause for celebration. Because the senses are the masters of this world, and they're extremely unreasonable, and they give bad information, bad advice, and we end up in a pit with people throwing stuff down on us, and it's a very unfortunate situation. So dignity is restored to the soul who feels overwhelmed and is profaned by being in the material world and being dominated by the indriyas. So really, in the process, step-by-step process of bhakti, one goes from having a little faith after getting some association with devotees, and then having more association with devotees deliberately, and then to taking vows that I'm going to make progress on this process of devotional service, and one takes vows. Then one comes to a point of reckoning with one's past and all that one's accumulated, the contents in one's heart, which one in bhakti realizes one is fully responsible for. Whatever kind of accumulation within my heart and mind, I take full responsibility. I did that, I collected it. It's all my stuff. And then gradually, as one engages more in bhakti, in the process of direct devotional service, then one purifies oneself just as much as one would wash out a room. You start in one corner and you start seeing there's dirt and dust and grime, and you start scrubbing there. And then you see, now that the floor is clean, the walls look terrible. So you start cleaning the walls, and then you have to replace the drapes after that. And then you need new furniture. The whole thing you start to see here, there, and everywhere where there's need for cleaning. And then the same thing with the process through purification. One begins to see one's own anarthas, or unwanted things that are there within one's own heart. They've infiltrated. I've let them in somehow. So one can then start to deal with those things and gradually purify them. And how does that happen? Really, it happens 50% by my own endeavor and 50% by the help of Krishna. So this is mentioned in the Srimad Bhagavatam by Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. You have to give your own endeavor, but then Krishna helps when he sees that you're trying. And what's the best way? Place yourself in front of devotees. But get yourself there. There's an old saying: if you don't need the meeting, then the meeting needs you. That if you're inspired, then the meeting needs you, the Sangha needs you, and if you're not inspired, then you need the meeting. You need to be there in the Sangha. Either way, you should try to get around the devotees, and when you're around devotees, then you hear the sound vibration of the spiritual world, and you also get natural direction from watching the example of other devotees. And then there's a kind of purification that takes place. One replaces the old values that one has. After all, these anarthas, they really mean there's a kind of a value system that I have, a way of looking at the world where I consider certain things to be worthwhile and other things to be not worthwhile. And that, in the association of devotees, changes. And one begins to feel that practicing direct devotional service, sitting in a room by oneself with a shudder over one's head and chanting Hare Krishna for 2 hours, I think that's valuable. Whereas before I might have thought something else was valuable, like sitting in front of a movie screen and watching a movie, like that's really valuable. So one's value system changes, and then there's a natural emergence of one's taste for Krishna consciousness that comes up. Actually, before that, one feels this steadiness, and this is marked by self-control and having conquered the senses. One can see it for oneself, that actually the senses don't, I can see them petitioning, I can hear them petitioning, but I no longer react to them. I just see them as agents which are no longer needed, and I no longer respond to them. And then from there, one begins to have a positive experience each time one hears about Krishna. Every time one hears the Hare Krishna, the Hare Krishna chant, and hears the words of the Srimad Bhagavatam, is an extremely positive experience. What's a negative experience? Well, one's chanting Hare Krishna or hearing the Srimad Bhagavatam. What would a negative experience be? That he just can't stay awake. That's one of the things. I start to listen. If someone came and told me I won the lottery, I'd wake right up again. So guess what? You just won the lottery for $1 million. I was sleepy a second before. I'm really tired listening to the Bhagavatam. Someone comes in. You just won the lottery for $1 million. And then you'd immediately wake up, right? But in the state of taste, one feels like one wins the lottery. Every verse feels like I won the lottery. There's so much taste flowing that one can't sleep during that. And goes on to stages of emotion, actual seriously deep emotion that one starts to develop for Krishna. Same kind of experience one may have for one's mother in this world. Different experiences. I miss my mother, or my mother passed away, and the heart just becomes inevitably heavy when you miss your mother's. These are emotions that are naturally there within the heart, only these are emotions that are connected to the material world. But there are natural emotions that we have for Krishna that begin to awaken as one sticks to the process of devotional service, association with devotees, especially Sangha with advanced devotees. And then that natural emotion, there's a confluence of emotions within the heart. And it's not as if, it's actually, there's a ray of the spiritual internal energy that touches one's heart. And one feels a complete connection to the spiritual world. And then one gradually becomes more and more attached to Krishna, completely attached. And then one comes to the stage of prema, or pure love for Krishna. And this can be attained by the process of bhakti as taught by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and passed down to us through his direct disciples, the 6 Goswamis, and on down through the disciplic chain to this present age right here in ISKCON Silicon Valley. And one doesn't need to go anywhere else. Everything is available that is needed. Only application is required in the process. So this verse is very encouraging that in that way, that you can become self-controlled, having conquered the senses. Once that happens, you can hold a big festival and invite all your friends, and everyone can come over, and you can be like, wow. And then, sarva bhutatma bhutatma, one feels a natural compassion for all other living beings, because he sees them as part and parcel of Krishna. Kurvan api, and so api means although, and api, engage, kurvan means engaged, and all engaged in work, that means you're still moving about Silicon Valley. Na lipyate, you're never entangled. You're not really in this world anymore. You're moving about the world officially, but your real connection is there with the spiritual world. So this verse, let's see the translation again. One who works in devotion, who is a pure soul, and who controls his mind and senses is dear to everyone, and everyone is dear to him. Though always working, such a man is never entangled. And now we'll take a few reflections. That just means anything that you heard so far that's stuck in your mind. Navina Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Vaisesika Prabhu, and welcome back. So, I was just reflecting on how you mentioned that when a person gives to Krishna, the satisfaction that they experience is more than knowing the money is still in my pocket. I had a boy we were on market in Powell, and he's living in an organic farm, and he just happened to come through San Francisco. He gave me $20, and after 15 minutes he came back and he gave me another $30 because he felt he hadn't given enough, or he felt like, oh, this felt so good, I really like doing this. And it's something very practical, which shows how the process of giving to Krishna makes winners and not losers. In fact, it is stated that the only money that you own is the money that you have donated, that you have given. That is eternally yours. Whereas everything else is highly doubtful. In this litigious society, it's highly doubtful what is still ours.
Thank you. That's an important idea. The only thing that you own is what you give away to Krishna. It becomes an eternal asset. Otherwise, it becomes a great burden. There's a lot of information about that throughout the Srimad Bhagavatam, about how wealth becomes a great burden. Not that one can't be wealthy, but one has to manage it properly and use it in Krishna's service. Otherwise, it becomes a crushing force. A story about Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj being carried around. He was not able to walk, so he had a disciple carry him around, and he was a highly revered sadhu. So one day, some man came along and offered him a rupee, and he took the rupee, and then after some time he told his servant, his assistant, to turn around and go back. So he went back and he said, "Here, please take it back. It's too heavy a burden for me to carry." Of course, he was showing a certain aspect. Srila Prabhupada also indicated that, sometimes sadhus artificially, this was not artificial, this was to express the great burden of material life. He was a Babaji. Well, Prabhupada showed that sometimes sadhus, that they won't take money artificially. But he said, then you give to me, I'll take it, because then I'll use it in Krishna's service. And this is yukta vairagya, using all energies in the service of Krishna. Then they become purified and glorious, and one actually gets credit for them. If somebody takes it away from you, the government takes it away, you lose it in a bad deal or something like that, it's just gone. And you're you're foolish, because you lost it. But if you give it to Krishna and it's gone, then it's on your eternal record. Preemptive. What else? Yes.
I was just thinking about the importance of putting ourselves in front of devotees. When I visited Los Angeles just for 2 days to meet Guru Maharaj, it was such an experience. Practically, we had to wait for 6 hours, and he'll come out for 5 minutes, and then he had to go for other things. But still, just being with the devotees, and all the time they just either they chant or they talk, they say a prayer or they talk about Krishna. So that experience was so nice, because and sharing with them like how his activities are, and even his health is bad, but still how he chants. Like one round takes long time, but he still chants, he reads, and he does his sadhana every day. I was really grateful that how our health can be taken away at any time. At least Guru Maharaj has his servants to help, but we'll be like bedridden. So I was really very appreciative of how important it is to take Krishna consciousness seriously and be in the association of devotees all the time.
Yeah, we're molded by our association, and it goes in very deeply. Therefore, throughout the teachings of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, we find this admonition that one should be careful about whom one associates with. Asatsanga tyage Vaishnavachar. He says, a Vaishnava is one who abandons bad association. In the association of devotees, one even unconsciously picks up many good habits. I remember when I first moved into the ashram in San Francisco, and it says an indelible impression, all the devotees that live there. One of a devotee, he's still on the planet, his name is Vrikasanga. Vrik, if you're listening, give me a call. For Vrikasanga, I remember he used to recite the 3rd chapter of the Bhagavad, first canto of Bhagavatam every day. All the incarnations, say it in English. He had memorized it. He'd walk up and down through the ashram just saying it. And then I remember Vijitatma. He was a big fan of the Nectar Devotion. He used to read the Nectar Devotion backwards and forwards all the time. And then he was always reciting aspects of the Nectar Devotion. And each one of the personalities of the devotees, we get an impression from them and their practices, and they go in. So if you get around devotees that are advanced and they have a momentum in devotional service, pick that up. Even if you get around new devotees with their enthusiasm, and you'll notice that they have a strong desire to advance in Krishna consciousness, one might think, oh, I wish I had so much enthusiasm for devotional service. Yes?
I just wanted to add to what Gandharvika Mataji was saying. This Sunday I was teaching the Bhakti Vaibhav class, and my chapter was from the 3rd canto. It was Kapil Dev's instructions to his mother on how to execute devotional service. And so he was talking about the Ashtanga Yoga, but the emphasis was on you should be concentrating on Paramatma. And Prabhupada says, said in one of the purports that whatever effects that you get from breathing, balancing, Ida, Pingla and all that, you get the same by chanting. So at the end of the class, I just asked a fun question, and I asked the students, are you going to take plan B or are you going to take plan C? And then Brajen Kumar responded on the text, and he said, I'm going to take plan A, which is association of devotees.
Well, you can hardly lose taking any plan in devotional service. Therefore, it's mentioned that various personalities adopted a singular means of practicing devotional service, and they all attained perfection. It's all good. Now I'm going to read to you the Bhagavatam, because it's sitting right here. And this is from the 11th canto of the Bhagavatam. And in this 11th canto, we have the astounding circumstance in the 2nd chapter. Maharaj Nimi meets the 9 Yogendras of meeting, as does Maharaj Nimi, the Navi-Yogendras, who are sons of Rishabhadeva. Rishabhadeva had 100 sons. 9 of them were these Yogendras. Kavi Havi Antariksha, Prabhuda Pipalayana Avirhotra, Chamasa Drumala, and Karabhajana. And each one of them give a very succinct teaching about bhakti to Maharaj Nimi, who's very interested in hearing. So we have the best circumstance you could ever imagine, and that is we actually have their recorded conversations. This is called revealed scripture, is that we can listen in to what they were discussing. And the greatest benefit in life is achieved by hearing these discussions between those who are enthusiastic about hearing and those who are qualified to speak. Shall we try it? All right, we're going to do it. Here we go. So, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Text 1. Sri Shukadev Goswami said, eager to engage in the worship of Lord Krishna, O best of the Kurus, Narada Muni stayed for some time in Dwarka, which was always protected by the arms of Govinda. Arms of who? Govinda. Correct. In the 2nd chapter of this canto, Bhagavad Dharma, or pure devotional service to Krishna, is explained by Narada Muni to Vasudeva, who had inquired with devotion. Narada Muni cites a conversation between King Nimi and the Jayantayas. According to Jiva Goswami, the word Abhikshnam indicates that although Narada Muni was frequently sent by Lord Krishna here and there for various pastimes, such as inquiring about the affairs of the world, Narada continuously returned to reside in Dwarka. The word Krishnopasana, lalasa, indicates that Narada was very eager to be near Krishna and worship him. Because of the curse of Daksha, Narada is never allowed to live continuously in one place. Sridhar Swami, however, has pointed out, Natasyam Shapade Prabhavaha. In Dwarka, there is no influence of curses or other such evils, because Dwarka is the abode of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and always protected by his arms, as shown by the word Govinda Bhuja Guptayan. The conditioned souls are struggling within the kingdom of Maya against the cruel laws of material nature, such as birth, death, old age, and disease. But if such conditioned souls have the good fortune to enter the city of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, whether Dwarka, Mathura, or Vrindavan, and live there under the direct protection of the omnipotent arms of the Supreme Lord Krishna, they will experience the unlimited transcendental bliss of real life, which is eternal and which is meant to be lived in the personal company of God. Didn't I mention that earlier about living in the Dham? It's a fact. And I've seen some people go, they take shelter of the Dham. They just go and live there because they feel that protection. You're not obligated to talk about anything else about Krishna in the Dham. There's no other business than Krishna consciousness when you go live in the holy Dham. And I heard a conversation. Prabhupada was lecturing a lot when he got to New York. Actually, he was overflowing with Krishna consciousness. He wanted to give it out to as many people as possible. I mean, imagine that he had been meditating on how to execute the orders of his spiritual master for so long, and now he finds himself right in the middle of New York City. And he's getting some facility. Krishna is reciprocating. And so he sits down. What else is he going to do? He sits down and begins to chant and then recite Bhagavad Gita and invite people to come in. So a few people came to start with. And you can tell from the effusiveness in Prabhupada's lectures and also his enthusiasm that he was excited to be able to speak Krishna's message to other people. And there's a few tapes around 1966, a few recordings, where there's some lady there. I'm not sure who she is, but she kept asking him for different spellings. She was taking copious notes. How do you spell this? How do you spell that? She had some previous reference to Indology, you can tell from the kinds of questions she's asking. And it seems as if she may be the only one there at the time. And Prabhupada goes on explaining everything. Well, maybe somebody else was recording. It's hard to say, but there weren't a lot of devotees, not like a room full of people. Prabhupada's explaining everything. And when he talked about the Holy Dham, Prabhupada was saying how it's a transcendental place, non-different than the spiritual world. He said, I've come from there. I've come from that Vrindavan Dham. And he said, actually, I'm always thinking about it. He said, I'd rather be there, but because I've ordered my spiritual master, I've come here. And he said, I've come here for you, to teach you this. But he said, but I'm always pining for Vrindavan. I'm always thinking of that Vrindavan. I always want to be there. And so one can take shelter of the Dham. Even if one can't go there, one can cultivate the knowledge of the Dham. I mean, there's so many beautiful verses in the Brihat Bhagavatamrita that will actually make you attached to the holy Dham. There are verses about Mathura, and what a beautiful place Mathura is. And after you start hearing Mathura, 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 you start hearing about it and you start thinking, wow, Mathura, that's Krishna's place. He actually lives there. And when you hear the word Mathura, you'll feel some ecstasy. And then you can actually develop a relationship with that Dham. And in your mind, you should live there. Lord Chaitanya says this is how you should, in your mind, if you ever wonder what you should do with your mind, that's what you should do with it. You should live in the Dham. And you can cultivate that by hearing and by associating with people who have come from the Dham. And this is the place where one gets complete shelter. And so from our life in this world, and this human life is very important. I mean, there's so many verses, and I've recited them millions of times, well, several hundred, dozens of times here in this class about the importance of human life from the Srimad Bhagavatam. But they all say it's very rare, it's also temporary, and in reference, in context of other types of life forms in this universe, it's very short. So we were hearing from Bhakti True Swami while we were in New Vrindavan. And he was talking about how the structure of the universe, it's like a big building. There are different sections to the building. The Earth planet, Bhumandala, is on the ground floor. Ground floor means floor number 1, not basement. So ground floor, if you go up and down in elevators, you go to the floor number 1, ground floor, so you can go out. Now there are other islands, they're called dvipas, that are surrounded by various kinds of oceans that are surround this whole area of the universe that we're in. And from those, one has to come to Bhumandala to get out the door. And if you're in the heavenly planets, you also have to come back down here to get out the door. The front door is here. Where is it? It's in Vrindavan. And actually this is verified in the Brihad Bhagavatamrita because Gopakumar tells his story about how he was going all over the universe. He went everywhere for our sake to show us that there's no other place to go ultimately than Vrindavan. And so in his travels, which were aimed at finding his Madan Gopal, the Lord of his life, and he was chanting his mantra, he got guidance from within and from without. And finally, the ultimate advice he got was to come back to Vrajdam, that means Gokula Vrindavan, the Vrindavan that's on this earth, and perform Sankirtan there. And by performing Sankirtan there, then he would easily go back home, back to Godhead. So this is verified. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur points out in a purport in the 11th canto, just read it recently, that one engages in this Bhumandala area as a human being in the service of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, performing the process of devotional service. One develops a relationship with Radha and Krishna through the mercy of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. One begins to live in Vrindavan either physically or within one's mind. And by the performance of Harinam Sankirtan, then one's transferred from here to a place in the material universe where Krishna's pastimes are going on live. And then you get trained up in those pastimes, and then from there, transfer back to Goloka Vrindavan. Of course, there are various other scenarios that may take place according to Krishna's desire, but this is this is a normal scenario. I mean, it's not really normal, it's pretty unusual. Normal scenario is you live, go to Home Depot, go shopping, you lose all your money because you can't pay your health insurance, then you die, and then you take rebirth and you start all over again. That's normal. Actually, that's abnormal. The real normal thing is to go back to Godhead. This holy Dham is being invoked in this purport. And the next verse says, "My dear king, in the material world, the conditioned souls are confronted by death at every step of life. Therefore, who among the conditioned souls would not render service to the lotus feet of Lord Mukunda, who is worshipable, even for the greatest of liberated souls?" So that question is asked in the first chapter of the Bhagavatam also. Who wouldn't want this? Who would not listen to this? Kova Bhagavatas Tasya. In purport, the word Indriyavan is significant in this verse. Indriyavan means possessing senses. Although we are conditioned within the material world, by the mercy of the Supreme Lord, we are awarded a human body which possesses distinct senses such as the eyes, ears, tongue, nose, and skin. Generally, the conditioned souls use these senses in a false attempt to exploit the material nature for sense gratification. But our material senses and their objects are temporary, and it is not possible to become peaceful or happy in the attempt to gratify our temporary senses with the temporary sense objects offered by Maya, the illusory energy of the Lord. In fact, our strenuous endeavor to satisfy the material senses inevitably brings exactly the opposite result, namely material suffering. A man is attracted to a woman, being sexually aroused, he marries her, and soon there is a family that requires ever-increasing support. In this way, his innocent and simple life is ended, and he spends the major portion of his life working hard, like an ass, to support the demands of his family. We should have this for the Sunday program, right? In the third canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, Lord Kapila describes very clearly that in spite of the exhausting work a man performs throughout his life, his family is ultimately dissatisfied, and when the exhausted father reaches an old age, the irritated family members look upon him just as farmers look upon an old and useless ox. Sometimes the sons dream of receiving their father's money as an inheritance and secretly wish for him to die. Nowadays, people strongly resent the trouble of caring for elderly parents and therefore send them to an institution where they die lonely and neglected after a life of hard work for their so-called loved ones. One doctor in England is seriously proposing euthanasia for elderly persons who are no longer productive. Nowadays, some people desiring material sense gratification but hoping to avoid the inconvenience of family life try to enjoy quote-unquote free sexual relations with women without the trouble of marriage. Through birth control and abortion, they eliminate the disturbance of caring for children. In this way, they hope to enjoy material sense gratification without any material impediment. By the laws of nature, however, such persons become bound in a network of sinful reactions by avoiding their real duty to the Supreme Personality of Godhead and by thoughtlessly causing violence and suffering to others for increasing their own sense gratification. Caught in a network of impious activities, they drift further and further away from their original pure consciousness and gradually lose all power to understand the laws of nature. Therefore, it is stated here, Sarvato Mrityuhu. Mrityu means death. Death suddenly appears, startling such confident sense gratifiers, and destroys their entire program of so-called material happiness. Often such persons are afflicted with ghastly diseases and undergo inconceivable suffering, which ends in death. If a sincere well-wisher points these facts out to them, trying to inform them of the reality, they become angry and accuse them of being a pessimist or a religious fanatic. In this way, they blindly ignore the laws of nature until these laws inevitably smash them down and drag them out of their fool's paradise. Because of an excessive accumulation of sinful results, they are forced into situations of great distress by the laws of karma. Sinking down into the lower species of life, they lose all awareness of that which lies beyond their gross material senses. Sometimes, a living being is able to understand the miserable result of materialistic sense gratification. Being frustrated by the pain and suffering of materialistic life and being ignorant of any superior life, he adopts a neo-Buddhist philosophy and seeks shelter in so-called nothingness. But there's no actual void within the kingdom of God. The desire to merge into nothingness is a reaction against material pain. It is not a tangible concept of the Supreme. For example, if I feel unbearable pain in my leg and the pain cannot be cured, I may finally agree to have my leg amputated. But it is far better to remove the pain and keep my leg. Similarly, because of false ego, we may think, I am everything. I am the most important person. No one is as intelligent as me. Thinking in this way, we suffer constantly and experience intense anxiety. But as soon as we purify the ego by admitting that we are insignificant eternal servants of Krishna, our ego will give us great pleasure. Sri Krishna, the Lord of the blissfully variegated spiritual sky called Vaikuntha, is always absorbed in transcendental enjoyment. In fact, Sri Krishna is the reservoir of all pleasure. People absorbed in materialistic enjoyment are bound by the laws of omnipresent death. But if we endeavor instead to serve the Supreme Personality of Godhead, we can immediately be connected to his Hladini Shakti. Everyone say Hladini Shakti. Hladini Shakti. Or blissful potency. That too. If we serve Krishna under the guidance of his authorized representative, the spiritual master, we can immediately get relief from material distress. Then we shall not yearn after nothing, but instead we shall be able to relish unlimited spiritual bliss in the service of the Supreme Lord. I like that last sentence. I liked a lot of them, but then we shall not yearn for nothing. Sarvato Mrityu also indicates that birth and death occur on every planet in the universe. Therefore, our so-called space travel and cosmic consciousness are useless, since there is no eternal life anywhere within the material cosmos. In conclusion, to understand the futility of engaging in the service of anything other than Krishna and to engage instead in serving that which is eternal and full of bliss is the highest possible development of intelligence. Although our present intelligence is narrow, being conditioned by the laws of nature, we can create unlimited good fortune for ourselves by taking shelter of the lotus feet of Mukunda. Of who? Mukunda. Learning to discriminate between that which is temporary and useless and that which is eternal and real. What did you hear in that? Yes?
So in the purport, Prabhupada says that if we understand that we are an insignificant servant of Krishna, then our ego will give us real pleasure. And usually when someone says your ego is giving you pleasure, that is has a very negative connotation. But it again goes to say that we're revealing the real nature of ourselves, and this ego is false and it is covering. But when it is used in the right purpose, it does serve the fact that it gives us true pleasure.
Yeah. Yes. Went well with the whole purport. Yes.
I also remember the sad story and the sad ending of a person, how he, at every step, he tries to enjoy and Maya constantly kicks him, how he gets married and then raises kids. And the saddest part was when the children actually wish the father dies. That's the really sad part of it.
Yeah, it's kind of sad. Yes.
I like the idea about the islands and Bhumandal and the exit door.
He has an exit door.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you actually study the cosmology of the Bhagavatam, we're in that place. We're really in striking distance. You came in the right yuga also. Kali Yuga is very special. In fact, the Kali Yuga is glorified in the Bhagavatam, in the 11th canto. Kalim sabhajayantya arya gunagyasara bhagina yatra sankirtani naiva sarvaswarto bilabhyate. Karabhajana Muni talks a lot about it. He says that people who know what's what appreciate Kali Yuga as the best of ages, because you can attain perfection in this age by performing Sankirtan. And there's also a way in which the demigods, they have to wait till the whole universe winds up before they can give up their post. Whereas human beings, it's fairly quick. We're just here for a few seconds. In compared to the demigods' time, we're just like a few seconds, and then but we're right next to the exit door, and full connection to Vrindavan and to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu during the Kali Yuga. They appear here, right on this earth. So it's an extremely fortunate situation. Any other thing that struck you? Yes.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. I really love the point that you said about the mind, that you can keep it busy just by thinking about the pastimes of Vrindavan. Just being in Vrindavan consciously, so that you could be less distracted with everything else that's around you. All the concoctions and stuff that mind creates.
It is a simple pleasure in the Dham. That devotional service is simple. It's just there's spontaneous love for Krishna, and that current is there in the Dham. One can pick it up. Like people walk around Govardhan Hill, they have such a taste for it. They keep going around and around and around because it's kind of like you can actually feel Krishna's mercy just walking around. It's uncanny, actually. And being in Vrindavan or Mayapur, one can imbibe. Imbibe means to drink. You drink in the environment. It gets in you. Yes?
Thank you, Maharaj. I really like the word controlling the senses, and I felt like yes, if you control the senses, when you control it, what is left is a pure devotional, a pure love, a pure emotional. You can say that. So when you control all senses and limit it, what is being left is just a pure love, pure bhakti. That what I felt it.
Yeah, something like that. A little bit more I would add. As Narada Muni points out in the 5th chapter of the first canto of Bhagavatam, Naishkarmyam apyachuta bhava varjitam, nashobhate jnanam alam niranjanam, kutak punas shashvara bhadram ishvarena charpitam karma yadapya karanam. And that is that there are those who are able to control the senses, and their lives are described as naishkarmyam. They no longer have a hankering for anything in the material world. Therefore, their desire to work here is nullified. But still, they may not have a connection with Achyuta, Krishna. They don't have any emotion for him yet. Achyuta bhava. So the verse says, Naishkarmyam api achyuta bhava varjitam, nashobhate jnanam alam niranjanam. There is a way in which one may be sense controlled and still not have achyuta bhava. For that, one needs to have sangha. You have to have a sangha of devotees. Bhavadbita bhagavatas tirta bhuta swayam vibo tirta kurvanti tirtani swantak stena gadaprita. Yudhishthira Maharaj says to Vidura that saints like you are holy places personified. We're just talking about the holy places. He said, you're a walking tirtha because you carry within your heart the love for the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That's part of the internal energy of the spiritual world. And when one comes in contact with pure devotees of the Lord, that potential that we have for loving Krishna can be reawakened by the sangha of the devotees. Because there are those who are sense-controlled, but then they don't have achyuta bhava. And that's nashobhate jnanam alam niranjanam. Narada says, even though they're sense-controlled, even though they're not engaging in material life, it's still not very nice. It's not beautiful. It doesn't look good. Nashobhate. And then he goes on to say, what to speak of people who are engaged in material activities, which is just plain stupidity, because they're getting a reaction for that, and they're being crushed by it. Okay, so we're sitting here in the middle of Silicon Valley, we're reading the Bhagavatam. And the next verse, we hear from, the next verse says, one day, the sage among the demigods, Narada, came to the house of Vasudeva. After worshipping Narada with suitable paraphernalia, seating him comfortably and respectfully bowing down to him, Vasudeva spoke as follows. Sri Vasudeva said, my Lord, your visit, like that of a father to his children, is for the benefit of all living beings. You especially help the most wretched among them, as well as those who are advanced on the path toward the Supreme Lord. Uttama Shloka. Purport? Ready? Yes. Vasudeva herein describes the glories of Narada Muni. The words Kripananam yata pitror uttama shloka vartmanam are significant. Kripananam refers to the most wretched persons, whereas uttama shloka vartamanam refers to the most fortunate, those who are advanced in Krishna consciousness. Sridhar Swami has stated, Tata Bhagavat Rupasya Bhagavato Yatra Sarva Dehinam Swataya Iti. The word Bhagavat Rupasya indicates that Narada Muni is an expansion of the Supreme Lord, and that his activities therefore bring immense benefit for all living beings. In the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, Narada Muni is described as a manifestation of the mercy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. There it is stated that Narada is especially empowered to give instructions in the art of devotional service to Krishna. Narada is especially able to advise the conditioned souls as to how they can dovetail their present activities with the devotional service of Krishna without unnecessarily disrupting their present lives. Good news. That last sentence was particularly relevant, isn't it? Narada is especially able to advise the conditioned souls as to how they can dovetail their present activities with the devotional service of Krishna without unnecessarily disrupting their present life. We're hearing from all these great personalities. Who have we heard from in the purports so far? In the purports. Sridhar Swami. Actually, this is written by the servants of Prabhupada. But they do quote Prabhupada quite a bit here. And Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur or Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati. So we're hearing from these great authorities. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati has defined the word kripana by quoting from the Brihad Aranyaka Upanishad. From which Upanishad? Yes. Etad aksharam gargi avidit tasmal lokat praiti sakripanaha. O daughter of Gargacharya, he who leaves this world without learning about the infallible Supreme is a kripana, or miser. In other words, we are awarded the human form of life so that we may understand our eternal blissful relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. As indicated in verse 2 of this chapter by the word indriyavan, the human body is specifically awarded so that we may serve the Supreme Lord Krishna. This human form of body is the greatest fortune because the highly evolved intelligence of human life enables us to understand Krishna, the absolute truth. If we are unable to understand our eternal relationship with God, we shall derive no permanent benefit whatsoever in the present life, nor can we ultimately benefit others. One who receives a great treasure but can neither use it himself nor dedicate it to the happiness of others is called a miser. Therefore, a person who leaves this world without having understood his actual position as servant of God is called a kripana, or miser. This verse states that Narada Muni is so empowered in devotional service of Krishna that he can lift even miserly rascals out of their illusion, just as a kind father goes to his child and wakes him from a distressing nightmare. Our present materialistic life is just like a troublesome dream from which great souls such as Narada can wake us. Narada Muni is so powerful that even those already advanced in devotional service to Krishna can greatly enhance their spiritual position by hearing his instructions, as they will be given here in the 11th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. Therefore, Sri Narada is the guru and father of all living beings who are originally devotees of the Lord, but who are now artificially attempting to enjoy the material world in the material bodies of human beings, animals, and so on. Text number 5. Do you have a reflection from that one? Yes.
I like the compassionate nature of Narada Muni and the analogy that is given that when a child is having a very bad dream, the father goes and wakes up. I remember Gita Priya was having something like that. I was waking up, so I was just thinking our position in this material world, how we are going through a bad dream and somehow devotees like Narada Muni are coming and waking us up.
Yeah, and I repeated that section. I thought was very practical. Narada Muni is especially able to advise the conditioned souls as to how they can dovetail their present activities with the devotional service of Krishna without unnecessarily disrupting their present life. Actually, he talks about that. Can I have the first canto, 5th chapter, right near the end, where Narada Muni talks about how the same kinds of exposure that caused our contamination when dovetailed to the Supreme Personality of Godhead then can become the cause of our liberation. And these are nice prayers to memorize. You can memorize this 5th chapter of the Bhagavatam, 1st canto. And also, if you're going to use this, you better join the gym, because, or maybe you won't have to, it becomes so strong. He says in 1.533, Amayo yascha bhutanam jayate yena suvrata tadeva hyamayan dravyam na punati chikitsitam. Everyone say chikitsitam. That means to be treated with something. It's medicinal. Oh, look at that. 5133. Sharda Dekshu. We could have gone that way. Don't tempt us. We go off on that. But it's okay. When you're reading the Bhagavatam, you can go off on, different roads. You'll just end up in ecstasy somewhere. Okay. O good soul, does not a thing applied therapeutically cure a disease which was caused by that very same thing? Prabhupada's purport. An expert physician treats his patients with a therapeutic diet. For example, milk preparations sometimes cause disorder of the bowels, but this very same milk converted into curd and mixed with some other remedial ingredients cures such disorders. Similarly, the threefold miseries of material existence cannot be mitigated simply by material activities. Such activities have to be spiritualized, just as by fire iron is made red hot, and thereby the action of fire begins. Similarly, the material conception of a thing is at once changed as soon as it is put into the service of the Lord. That is the secret of spiritual success. We should not try to lord it over the material nature, nor should we reject material things. The best way to make the best use of a bad bargain is to use everything in relation with the Supreme Spiritual Being. Everything is an emanation from the Supreme Spirit, and by His inconceivable power, He can convert spirit into matter and matter into spirit. Therefore, a material thing, so-called, is at once turned into a spiritual force by the great will of the Lord. The necessary condition for such a change is to employ so-called matter in the service of the Spirit. That is the way to treat our material diseases and elevate ourselves to the spiritual plane where there is no misery, no lamentation, and no fear. When everything is thus employed in the service of the Lord, we can experience that there is nothing except the Supreme Brahman. The Vedic mantra that everything is Brahman is thus realized by us. Practical, Narada Muni. Then I'll just read the translations to 34, 35. Thus, when all a man's activities are dedicated to the service of the Lord, those very activities which cause his perpetual bondage become the destroyer of the tree of work. 35. Whatever work is done here in this life for the satisfaction of the mission of the Lord is called bhakti yoga, or transcendental loving service to the Lord, and that which is called knowledge becomes a concomitant factor. Whatever work done here in this world, in this life for the satisfaction of the mission of the Lord. That's doable, isn't it? You're all doing that. While performing duties according to the order of Sri Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one constantly remembers Him, His names, and His qualities. Let us all chant the glories of Vasudeva along with his plenary expansions, Pradyumna, Aniruddha, and Sankarshan. And this one, good to know this verse for your chanting of the holy name. Thus, he is the actual seer who worships in the form of transcendental sound representation the Supreme Personality of Godhead Vishnu, who has no material form. And finally, actually 2 more verses. O Brahmana, thus by the Supreme Lord Krishna I was endowed first with the transcendental knowledge of the Lord as inculcated in the confidential parts of the Vedas, then with the spiritual opulences, and then with his intimate loving service. See it step by step. And finally, please therefore describe the Almighty Lord's activities which you have learned by your vast knowledge of the Vedas, for that will satisfy the hankerings of great learned men and at the same time mitigate the miseries of the masses of common people who are always suffering from material pangs. Indeed, there is no other way to get out of such miseries. Indeed, there is no other way to get out of such miseries. Indeed, there is no other way to get out of such miseries. I rest my case. So, we read from Bhagavad Gita, we read from Srimad Bhagavatam, we discussed, and now we can chant Hare Krishna. And who could have a better Wednesday night than that? Right? Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Preshtaya Bhutale Sri Mate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Prachardine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Nitai Gaura Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Tai Gaur Hari Bol. Nitai Gaura Haribo, 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 Nitai Gaura Haribo. Jai Jai Prabhupada, 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 Jai Jai Prabhupada. Congratulations.